Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to today's broadcast. It's the Monday, July 27th, 2026 episode of the Marco Dure Show, the only show where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Welcome to the show today, everybody. Glad to be with you and to start your week off the right way, as always. A new week, the same old playbook, the same old similar rhetoric. The American war drums are banging louder now than ever, with no one in sight. Unfortunately, I have to tell you that. We have a few politicians, though, and even fewer in the legacy media that are calling for peace, like myself. Peace in Iran, peace in Ukraine, peace in Gaza, peace in the West Bank. Always bang the war drums and keep the status quo that defending Iran and, of course, helping Ukraine are righteous and noble in effect, of course. This is what they sell you. This is exactly what the media sells you. Now, I'm old enough to remember when President Trump ran for office in 2024, and he specifically said he would end wars, not start wars. Well, Ukraine hasn't ended. We're now talking about aiding and abetting them. We started a war with Iran that we did not need to start at all. Not to worry, though, I'll break that down for you on today's show, 2AT. You'll know everything that's going on there. You know what's interesting? I was watching a movie over the weekend, and I hardly watch movies anymore because I'm always focusing on this show, bringing you the latest, greatest information and news stories. But I got to tell you, I was watching this movie called Wag the Dog. It's a great movie. Dustin Hoffman, Robert De Niro. Great movie. And the movie centers around the news media and how news is presented to you. Now, I don't want to spoil it for you if you haven't seen the movie. But I was thinking about it when I was watching. I said, this is brilliant. I said they're orchestrating something to get the American people to think, this is happening here, focus your attention over on this, and don't pay attention to this article of which we know is likely to be true, right? And we see this time and time again in the media. What are we being sold every time we turn on Fox News or Newsmax or CNN or MS Nobody Care, all these news organizations? They try to sell you their end of the story. But what is actually the truth about what is going on? That's what we always have to ask ourselves. Is what I'm seeing truthful? Does it align with my own personal values? We have to stop diverting our attention to these other topics that make no sense, folks. And to me, it's all obfuscation. What do I mean by that? I mean, did you see President Trump holding the White House Correspondents' Dinner on Friday evening? Now, apparently, the White House Correspondents' Dinner takes precedent over finding ways to end this ever-widening war with Iran. And believe you me, it's ever-widening. Anyone watching that, though? And by the way, I didn't watch it. I saw some clips of it. This is not the same Donald Trump. There was low energy. There was bad jokes. Having to explain those bad jokes. Trolling the press corps that he'll run for president for a fourth term, which I thought was an interesting choice of words. All adorned with a red Trump 2028 hat. I mean, Trump control, apparently, but, I mean, what is the purpose of all this? Is this more important than taking care of business? I mean, again, President Trump will be lucky if Republicans can even keep the House and the Senate in the midterms. That is, if he doesn't get impeached, let alone run for office for a fourth time. When his approval ratings are polling roughly in the 30 percentile range, folks. On most issues across the board, people are not happy with what's going on. They're not happy with the economy. They're not happy with the way these wars are being handled. These are main issues. And by the way, we're now 99 days until the midterms, and he really doesn't seem to really care. Doesn't seem to give a damn. Certainly he's doing nothing to coax the American people to think that he is. So all this is blowing up in his face right now. All amid these wars burgeoning in Ukraine and Gaza, Iran alike, in the West Bank too. That's not specifically a war, but there is lots of chaos going on as always. People want the wars to stop. They don't want us to be involved, and they definitely don't want us to be borrowing money to pay for all this. You and I are paying for everything I'm talking about right now. No, it's not going to new roads, new hospitals, new schools, new bridges, new infrastructure, healthcare, you name it. No, it's not going to any of that. It's going to these foreign wars, and of course the military security industrial complex collects all the money. Nice settlement, huh? Then you have Israelis, again on our taxpayer dollars, these Israeli settlers. They're attacking and killing Palestinians in the West Bank. I saw several different pieces of footage over the weekend, stealing, destroying their homes, leveling their homes. I mean, it's crazy to me. Crazy to me. And no one in our press says a damn thing about it. I saw nothing over the weekend about this. People removing people from their homes, attacking people, accosting people, going into their homes. I saw a bulldozer leveling a housing structure. Other houses set on fire. Olive groves set on fire. Animals poisoned. What the hell is going on here? I have yet to see any of the plethora of this footage of this immense violence taking place in the news media. Why are we not seeing this? And again, Gaza's no better, folks. There's nothing positive to report on there. There is no ceasefire. And Israel's moving forward because, again, you've been told by the news media that there's a ceasefire. And your attention diverts. Oh, ceasefire, good, everything's over. We're not hearing anything about it, therefore everything's fine. Everything's great. Couldn't be better. Well, that's the opposite of the truth, of course. Still, Palestinians in Gaza are being killed. Israel's now talking about taking, I believe, 80% of Gaza right now, and they're talking about making permanent Jewish settlements, and they're going to encourage the Palestinians to migrate someplace else. Never tell you what they'll do should they choose not to do so, the some 2 million people that still remain there. Mostly living in these makeshift tents because 85% of Gaza lie in complete ruins. Yeah, they got to get those Hamas, don't they? They got to get Hamas, huh? How's that working out for them, too, by the way? Yeah, they can't even defeat Hamas, and yet they're somehow going to take Lebanon. It's amazing to me. How any American, really, ladies and gentlemen, especially those on the conservative side of the aisle, my side of the aisle, who claim to believe in freedom and the pursuit of happiness, natural law, justice, law and order for everybody, respecting that rule of law, following the law. I mean, that's our number one mantra, folks. We need to follow the rule of law. I agree with you 100%. We need to follow the rule of law, everybody, not a select group of people. But yet we're turning a blind eye when it goes to people someplace else who should demand that same respect, living under the same rule of law. Why would we support a country that is allowing this to happen? Or any country for that matter. All turning a blind eye to what we see right in front of our faces. We should want our way of life to be applied to everybody, not just whom we deem it to be so. And that's what I have a problem with a lot of what we're seeing right now in the news media, folks. We're talking about time and time again what's going on here, what's going on there, but then we're completely ignoring what's happening in Gaza and the West Bank. And according to President Trump, whatever he tells Netanyahu, he does. And that's why I'm so interested to hear this meeting that's supposed to be going on, I believe, today sometime. Yep, but we hear nothing about Trump stopping or mitigating any of the chaos that's happening in these two areas of the world. Certainly about nothing what's going on in Lebanon right now, too. And by the way, don't forget, 99 days away from the midterms, don't forget the rising inflation, the rising unemployment, the depletion of U.S. missiles and stockpiles, the oil reserves alike at record low levels. I saw an article in Breitbart this morning. I had to laugh. Trump told the Wall Street Journal that the stockpiles are totally fine. We've got everything we need. I said to myself, I just read a report last week. It's going to take us, in some cases, 5 years to get the same level of stockpiles that we had prior to this war. We're getting low, folks. That's what it comes down to. On top of that, we're looking at insurmountable national debt. And again, here's President Trump cracking jokes with the press corps. It's just everything I was seeing on the television screen on Friday evening. The same press corps that hates him, or at least we're told they do. Now, before I fill you in on the latest events regarding Ukraine and, of course, the Iranian war, which are getting more and more out of hand as time goes on, despite the pause in fighting for the last 3 days between the United States and Iran, I want to get away from the smoke and mirrors, and I want to get away from these distractions, right? And shift our attention to a topic that's actually truly important to us and really important to the entire world. Now, you know, I oftentimes discuss with you my antipathy and my massive psychotic hatreds about this war in Iran, how our military objective is completely futile. We never seem to get an answer on this. And again, folks, I'm being objective about this. We're told it's one thing one day, and then it's another thing another day, that we've got to do it for the Iranian people another day. It just goes in a circle. We never get a true answer about what's going on, what a win actually looks like. The economic consequences that will follow this war seem to be inevitable at this point, ladies and gentlemen. We're on the track. We're moving forward to it. And there's really no reverse on it. But we haven't talked about the social consequences of this war in Iran, the ramifications as a result of it, due to the war, because of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. And I want to talk about this on today's show first. And again, for those of you that have listened to my show for really any length of time, you've heard me speak about the lack of urea, sulfuric acid, not being transported from the Persian Gulf. Now, these two compounds produce what is called the nitrogen-based fertilizer. Now, you've heard me go on and on about we need the fertilizer for crop production, again, throughout the world. This is roughly, I believe, 35% of the global nitrogen-based fertilizer comes from this region. So, in other words, a hell of a lot. And that's being completely shut off right now. But most of this fertilizer is crucial for the global south. This means the developing nations, this would be third world nations. This nitrogen-based fertilizer is very, very crucial. And the lack of it creates a major problem. Whether President Trump knows about it or not, he's starting a war on the global food supply. Mike Adams wrote a crucial piece about this topic just last week, and I gotta read this to you because it's so crucial to understand this point. And by the way, I hear nobody talking about it. Very, very few people. But I was blessed enough to hear him speak. He was on with Danny Davis last week, and he had this article, and I'm reading the article. I said, my viewers have got to hear this. We've got to know what's going on around us, folks. And by the way, he's a food scientist. His labs do very different testing on the food that America gets, and they figure out what's inside of it. Great, great stuff, and he's somebody you should definitely check out at some point. But in this article he's got, it says here that the global agriculture depends on synthetic nitrogen fertilizers, just what I told you about. So in other words, they need that urea, they need that sulfuric acid, they have to have it. And the kicker is that about 10% of the world supply comes from the Persian Gulf. Now, so you take all those products, 10% come from the Persian Gulf. This comes via the natural gas, what's called the Haber-Bosch process that came and originated from Germany. Because before then, this took place around just after World War I. It was starting to take place a few decades later. Then we had the Green Revolution right here in the United States. So we're producing food on a global scale. So I want you to understand all this. We think about farming and what have you in the United States. But the main concept about all this is that we went from a much more agrarian, more locally based food supply. After World War II, we developed this kind of global food supply, green revolution. More people are producing food for a larger scale of people. Okay? So when you see food, for instance, coming from, Guatemala, Mexico, Canada, United States, all these big producers, and this goes all over the world. It's done en masse. But what's important about this, 10% of these nitrogen-based compounds that come out of this region, they produce this very, very important amount of these nitrogen-based fertilizers. It's very, very crucial. So when you lack the urea, you lack the sulfuric acid, the ammonia, all these very different compounds that are necessary. Absolutely. And by the way, we talk about the oil, we talk about the liquefied natural gas, the helium. Everything is crucial to this region. Most people don't even really talk about it. But let's hone in on the fertilizers for this moment. 10% of the world relies on what comes out of this region. Very, very important. Now, that's 400 million people in the world today, folks. So it's a pipeline from the Gulf to the dinner plates all across Asia and Africa alike. So this is what I'm talking about when I mentioned the global south to you. Europe, all of Russia, if you will. Again, everything north of Africa. So anything Middle East, going all the way to China, everything south of that minus New Zealand and Australia, that is all considered, South America, Central America, all that is considered the global south. That's a lot of people. Quite a bit of people. And again, this fertilizer is crucial for their very survival because this is how we get food to these people. If we go back to more of the agrarian sector that I was just talking to you about, again, we had more farmers at that time, if you will, in this country. So we're seeing more of the big farming going on. Now, I've expressed my dismay with all that to you several times, but this is the world we live in now. So we have the bigger farms, the bigger producers now, producing on a wide range scale. That's what it comes down to. So this blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, this blockade has really disrupted the global supply of the nitrogen fertilizers, which again are essential for modern agriculture. We don't live in this agrarian society anymore, where everybody has a farm, everybody has a garden. We just don't live. It's not practical anymore. There's just too many people, less land. It all changes over time. So I want you to keep that in mind right now. This Haber-Bosch process, again, that I told you originated in Germany, is not just this obscure industrial footnote. This is the single most important chemical reaction for human survival today. So we're talking about fixing the atmospheric nitrogen into ammonia that feeds the crops. This is all very, very crucial, folks. Now, he goes on to say that fertilizers like urea are derived from natural gas through this Haber-Bosch process. This is how they kind of extract these nitrogen-based compounds. They pull that, and again, they use it for the crop yields and what have you. If the war halts those exports, this is what he says here. The food supply chain ruptures within months, not years. There is no plan B to this because, again, they're relying heavily on this process. Africa, much of Asia, again, South America. There is no plan B. There is no going back on this. So the longer President Trump extends this war, the greater this problem will be. I will say this to you. I said to you prior to this. The United States will be affected by this, absolutely 100%, but it will not be on the scale that we see in the global south. The global food system is really just any more than a house of cards. And by the way, Trump and Netanyahu have really just, been the ones that have been pushing this war. And this is why we see a lot of these problems. These are the two world leaders that want this war to go on. But no one is talking about the social problems, the social consequences that result as this war continues. No, we talked about the economic problems. Sure, absolutely. And by the way, I'll extend to you, ladies and gentlemen, in America, if we don't get the right amount of heavy crude oil to the United States, where we have 70% of all of our refineries take in that heavy crude and refine it into diesel and jet fuel, if you will. If you want to fly somewhere this summer, or if you want, your tractor to have the diesel in it so you can use it, right, folks? I would imagine to you this would all be very important. Unless you're completely self-sufficient, you're listening to me and laughing and saying, well, I'm good to go. But most people listening are not in that category. By the way, if you are, God bless you. I always encourage people to be self-sufficient. Always be prepared, absolutely. But most of us, it's just not practical anymore. We just don't live in that type of society anymore. There's more people, so that means there's less land available, and there's less farmland in this country. We have Bill Gates of hell, for instance, buying up a lot of this farmland. We have Chinese nationals buying up a lot of this farmland next to military bases, which I would think would be a national security problem as well. But again, I digress to you. Here's the problem. This is the main problem. I want you to listen to me. This is the main problem. Either this is going to cause a massive, well, it is going to create a massive famine, but it's either going to cause a mass exodus from these countries, these people in these countries who will essentially be starving to death fairly soon, will either A, starve to death, or 2, they will leave that country. They'll leave that country to go someplace else, a first world country, folks, if you will, to find this food. And they've got nothing to lose. Either you die or you try to find a way to live. Someplace that has access to this food. Does that mean we'll see a mass of people coming from Central and South America, again, like we saw under the Biden years, to come to the United States and utilize this food that we have in our country? That's a possibility. Now, you might say, well, Gervais, it's President Trump. He won't let him in. He'll stop him at the border. Okay, that makes sense to me. But what about after that? Right? Well, what comes after that? When people say, you know what, I'm just not going to stay here anymore. I'm going to go someplace where there's at least some guarantee where I can possibly get some food. I'll go elsewhere. I'll just travel someplace else. And we know we have the NGOs in this country that will certainly facilitate that. So we're talking about 400 million people. So either we have lots of dead people or we have people on the run, people moving, people going from A to B, from the Middle East into Eastern Europe, from North Africa into Western Europe. I mean, the list goes on and on, one of the possibilities. But this is a big problem because this will have an effect on the global economy. It'll have a great effect on the food supplies in these existing countries that have access, or at least more access, to this fertilizer. No one is telling you about this. And by the way, let me just, again, be very clear with you today, as I always am. Oil spikes today, food prices rise in the near future, all right? So what we're experiencing right now, this is what Mike Adams was telling Danny Davis. Again, great interview. I implore everybody to go listen to it. He said the food we're eating right now has already been cultivated prior to this war starting, by and large, right? You know, you go to a local farm, maybe it's different for you. But most of the food we're eating right now has already been planted prior to this war starting on February the 28th. So really March 1st, we'll say. Right, that's when, the strait was officially closed, the traffic stopped. So we're eating the food that's already been produced, it's been shipped already, it's been processed, if you will. It's, been shipped out. You have access to it. So right now we're not experiencing that food shortage. But the fertilizer disruption takes time to cascade through the growing seasons and the already existing stored food reserves in our country. So the real famine arrives roughly 12 to 24 months after this cutoff. So we're looking at roughly 2027, 2028. This will be catastrophic if we don't reverse course, if we don't do something about this right away. So again, if the Strait of Hormuz continues to remain closed because of this ever-widening war that we're talking about, again, provoked by President Trump, his Israeli allies, we know Netanyahu is going to talk about extending this war. Why? Because he doesn't give a damn. What the hell does he care? He knows Trump will do everything he wants. It's just the way it is, folks. And again, I can't say it to you any other way. I just can't lie to you. Everything Netanyahu wants, Netanyahu has gotten in some way or another. And as a result, millions of people will most definitely starve to death again in the global south. And you'll see millions of people also leaving their home countries and going someplace else. Well, what have we seen in Europe as of late? We see this mass exodus of people coming from Africa, from Asia, the Middle East, coming into European cities, with the exception of maybe Hungary and Poland and Russia alike. Maybe throw a Switzerland in there. But by and large, you're seeing these countries take in the brunt of these people. UK, France, Spain, Italy, Germany, Sweden. The list goes on. And we're seeing how they're sharing their culture with the Europeans. And they seem to be loving it, folks. my what I'm seeing correctly tells me. This is a major problem. This is a crucial problem. This is a global problem. And I fear we are not going to do anything to stop this. This because I don't know if we're void of reality. I just don't know if we care. I don't know if President Trump wants, I guess, the world to see his prowess on his war goals. I don't know what it is. I really don't know. Any rational person by now, I believe, would have gotten us out of this war. We would have cut our losses and said, let's get out. And I was praying early on he would have been like Reagan after the bombing of the Beirut barracks. And he would have said, we're getting out of here. We're leaving. We're not going to go to war with them. We're going to get the hell out of there. That's exactly what Caspar Weinberger told Reagan ahead of time. He said, they don't want us here. So why are we putting our troops in this region? And of course, the bombing happened and he agreed with Cap Weinberger after that. We don't need to be in this war. Folks, we just don't. There is no imminent threat. Believe me when I tell you. If there was an imminent threat, let me just point this out to you. If there was an imminent threat in this war, the Iranians clearly would have done it by now. But what are they attacking? They're attacking U.S. air bases, the proxies in the region. They're not attacking the continental United States. And by the way, they never have. And if this so-called death cult, this so-called number one state sponsor of terror, wanted to do that, they probably would have done it by now. Don't you think so? I mean, now would be the time to do something like that, I would imagine. For a regime that is, again, hell-bent on destroying Israel, the West, and the United States alike. This is, again, my take on this, folks. This is what the intelligence tells us. I don't make this up to you. I go by the facts. So if there is no imminent threat, let's get out of the region. Let's stop this war. At least just move out. Claim victory. Say, hey, we bombed them for 13 days straight. We reassessed over the weekend. We don't have to do this anymore. And then the strait will open up in the capacity that the Iranians would like it to open up. They will continue to charge their tolls. But really, the MOU is dead. But I say this to you. I say this all to you because we will reap the ramifications of this happening. You don't think people from Central and South America would try to find ways in the United States? We see it all the time. Heck, you can see video footage in San Diego. People coming off boats, running into wherever they're going. And nobody stops it. We don't have anyone, I guess we don't have a Coast Guard anymore patrolling our shorelines. I don't understand that, how we don't do that anymore. We see it happen in Florida. We see boats randomly showing up. People get off the boat, makeshift boats, and just run wherever the hell they want to go. This has got to stop. This has to stop. This needs to stop. But this war needs to stop as well because we are going to have a famine globally on our hands, and it will be the response. Well, it will be because of us. There's no other way for me to say that to you. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, let me just say to you, again, we have to look down the road. Where do we go from here? What happens next? Okay? Let's get out of this. Let's just leave it because we're not winning this conflict. It's never going to work. But, you know, I hear I told you before, I hear the war machine rumbling on. We constantly hear, you know, and by the way, I like Fox News. I really do. But some of the people they have on, my God, again, I never hear anyone come on and say, this would be good if we got out of this. Where is the voice of reason? Every person on is banging the war drum. Let's continue on. Let's finish the job. We keep hearing finish up. What job? How are we going to finish this job? Nobody can tell you. Nobody understands what that means. Now, before we talk about what's happening in the Red Sea, because again, that's going to become another major problem in this conflict, I want to play you a gentleman named Sid Rosenberg. And he is on WABC. And I've never listened to his show, but he was on Fox and Friends over the weekend. And he had this to say. Take a listen.
It is inevitable that President Trump is going to have to do what he doesn't want to do, which is go in there with this massive all-out attack. There's no other way to stop this. There's no other way to win this war. So, again, he's trying to do the best he can. He's a very nice man. I love President Trump. He doesn't want people to die. He really doesn't. Okay, he's a nice man. But there's no other way to end this. Once you start this, Midnight Hammer was great. Epic Fury was great. Once you start this, there needs to be a finish. And the only finish is complete surrender by the Iranians. I hate to say it, but complete annihilation.
Again, what are we calling for here? Calling for the annihilation of the Iranian people? No, but what else would complete annihilation be, folks? That's exactly what he's calling for. How would we execute something like that where we have a country that is the size of the American Midwest? It's roughly the size of Alaska. Again, a huge swath of land, mostly mountainous. How would we get troops in undetected to these big cities? You're not going to be able to do it. We're talking about land invasions now. We're talking about putting troops on Kark Island or Keshem Island. I mean, it's just, there is no strategy here. They're just, again, saying what we think would work. Some people believe, that we'd have to annihilate everybody and 93 million people in a war that we started. Again, this country did not attack us, folks. Just didn't attack us. But I've been told by people that are privy to the White House, speak to people in the White House, I'll just leave it to you like that President Trump, again, watches Fox News every evening. Okay, fine. Again, I do too. But I'm objective when I watch things. I break things down. I say, is this correct? Is this position going to benefit in something positive? Will this work? Is this even necessary? Again, these are the questions you need to ask yourself. We have to be objective in our approach to everything. There is no objectivity to this war. There is no reason for this war. If there is no threat, there was no imminent threat, there is no reason for this war. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. Yet again, we have the likes of General Jack Keane, folks. Oh, yeah. General Keane, you can't go wrong with a General Keane clip. He said just this morning on Fox Business. Here we go.
Well, I think there's an overture being made by Iran once again, to their primary objective here is to do what? It's to stop us from firing on them. And they're saying everything probably some of our negotiators want to hear, likely talking to Oman and maybe the Qataris and the Pakistanis, getting them involved as well. I'm highly skeptical anything will come of it. The Iranians look at the Straits of Hormuz as a strategic asset. And believe me, they're not going to give it up without a fight. That's the path we're on. And why? Because it gives them influence and control in the Middle East in a way that they never expected to have. And so will they maybe say, we'll stop firing on you, therefore we'll have negotiations, you stop firing on us? They may say that, but that doesn't mean they're not going to intimidate and coerce and control the Straits.
None of this would have happened if we had not invaded. If Israel did not go in, the United States followed right behind, we would have a wide open Strait of Hormuz right now. Hell, we probably would have had a deal right now. Last June, we had a perfect deal with the Iranians. I can't say this enough. They would have agreed to no nuclear weapons. They would have agreed to weapons inspectors. They would have agreed to enrich uranium to 3.75%. All this would have been great. And President Trump allowed Netanyahu to go in and do this. Now, the only reason you would go and do that is if you wanted regime change. They didn't get that. And again, what I've been told is that David Barnea, who was the head of Mossad, Prime Minister Netanyahu, when they were meeting with President Trump in our Situation Room, by the way, in the United States, they sold him this rotten bill of goods, that the Iranians would fall in about 4 or 5 days, roughly. We'd have victory. We could install the Pahlavi. You can install whoever the hell you want. But it didn't happen. The government just did not collapse. The people did not rise up against their government. Why? Because, again, most of them believe in their government. I know some of you don't want to hear that, but that's the truth of the matter. They actually believe in their government. And the constant war since the assassination of Ayatollah Khamenei has only strengthened their resolve. That's why you see the people in the streets with the Death to America, the The signs, the placards, the shouting. You know, I'm not in favor of this. I don't like hearing that. I would love to have peace with the Iranians. But you have to understand something. The Iranian people, they're not talking about the American people. They're talking about our government. They hate our government because of what our government has been doing to them through sanctions, through war, through this latest round of war and attacks. You had 40 to 45 million people. Yeah, 40 to 45 million people in Iran, some in Iraq, of course, attending. You know, they're foreign dignitaries as well. But the bulk of that 40 to 45 million people were Iranians. The Iranian people. It's a massive, we've never seen a funeral procession ceremony like that ever, with that much in attendance. So you have people now that are extremely angry that their country's been attacked, right? Now their roads and bridges are being attacked. Obviously people, I'm sure they know. They obviously know about the 168 schoolgirls that we killed with the Tomahawk missiles that we never answered for. The 20 female volleyball players striking civilian sites, throwing sanctions on, continuing this war. When you had Arachi coming out and suggesting more diplomacy, that pissed off the Iranian people. It really did, because they want action. They don't want to negotiate. They want action to go out of this. They want to win. And that tells you everything you need to know about their resolve right now. They've had enough of this. Now, we could play you Mike Waltz going on, Fox Sunday Morning briefing or whatever the hell it is. Oh, we've been at war with them for 47 years. Yeah, we've been at war with them for 47 years. Absolutely. I have no doubt about that. And it started in 1980 when Jimmy Carter held back the Iraqis to go in there and start an 8-year war, where anywhere between 300 and 700,000 Iranians died. We gave them weapons. We gave them chemical weapons. We know that 70,000 civilians died in that war. And now who's coming forward in the leadership is the group of men. They were very young at that time, including Mojtaba Khamenei, who didn't have to fight in it too, by the way. Volunteered when he was 17. They are now the ones that are running the government. This is a brand new group of people. Pezeshkian fought in the war. Arachi fought in the war. I mean, so they're people with history of this, what's going on now. They've been under sanctions by the United States, which cripples their government. We had the undervaluing of the real earlier this year that Scott Bessent was so proud of when he was at the World Economic Forum. Now, ladies and gentlemen, listening to me, if this was happening in the United States, and let's just use the UK, for example. If the UK was constantly undermining the United States, if they were getting Canada or Mexico to invade the United States and giving them weapons, and the result was hundreds of thousands of Americans dying, or crippling sanctions, or undermining the currency, all these things were happening. Wouldn't we be pretty pissed off at the United Kingdom? Wouldn't we be? We would probably hate them, I would imagine. And then if we saw an assassination, like the Iranian people witnessed, you have a whole group of people, likely under the age of 50, that really probably didn't understand what was going on at the time. Probably maybe a little younger, maybe under 40, I would have to say. They didn't witness this war. They heard about the war, but they never witnessed it. Now they're witnessing what's going on. They're seeing a blatant attack amid negotiations on their country, on their way of life. And by the way, most of the people in this country identify as Shia Muslims, so there's really not that much of a divide. They believe in their government. They elect their government leaders. I know you're told that, Israel's the only democracy in the region. Well, that's not true. Iran is a constitutional republic. I know that sounds crazy to hear this, but they operate on a constitution. Now, their constitution is different than ours, of course, but they elect people to govern. They elect people to parliament. They elect their president. They elect their mayors and their city council. It's not a fascist-run government like we're told it is. And so we have to take a step back and say to ourselves, again, if this was happening to us, how would we react? If we had this happening to us for 47 years, how would we react to this, folks? We would react, obviously, with lots of angst, lots of hostility, obviously. Again, I don't like hearing these things about the United States. I wish we could trade with them. I know even last year, Pezeshkian was saying, listen, we want to work with the United States. We want to trade with you. This is what he came out saying last year. And I said to myself, this is brilliant. I thought what Trump was doing was amazing. I said, if we can get this negotiation, we can open up trade with Iran, this will benefit everybody. And hopefully these tensions will stop. But we decided to allow Israel to go in and bomb. We decided to go and bomb ourselves. Now we're doing this again. It's not working. It's not working. And it's not going to lead to regime change. It's not going to lead to anything positive. Mojtaba Khamenei recently announced that Iran will now stand with Lebanon. In any future memorandum of understanding or any negotiation, the first term will always be to protect Lebanon's sovereignty. So that's a big loss for, obviously, Netanyahu and his Likudniks, who desperately want to take over southern Lebanon and keep that land. I imagine that will come up in their discussion, and I doubt we'll be told about this, but he's going to coax President Trump. He's going to try to goad him into staying in this war for as long as we can. And that's going to be just, again, as I said, detrimental to our economy, the world economy. We'll see lots of recession and, of course, future starvation and famine for the global south. Nothing positive comes from this. This is the problem. It's not like we're gaining anything from this. It's not like we're, nothing good comes from this. Only bad. So I say, let's cut our losses. Let's get out. Let's regroup. Let's build up our military on our own. Let's stop investing in war and start investing more in the United States. Let's try that for once. Could we have a decade where we try that for once instead of endless wars, endless bombings, endless intervention all over the world? I think it'd be a nice change of pace. I think most Americans would agree with me on that one. And by the way, folks, this comes from NBC News. It says here that Yemen's Iran-backed Ansarallah, you know them as Houthi rebels, said that they fired missiles and drones on Saudi Arabia in response to Saudi airstrikes on the strategic Red Sea city of, I believe it's Hodeida. In another escalation over a vital shipping routes in the Middle East, while the United States and Iran continue to vie for control over the Strait of Hormuz. So now we only have, we have two different shipping lanes now blocked off. The Houthis are blocking off the Bab el-Mandeb Strait to access by the Saudi ships. We're seeing that they're holding good to their word and continuing to attack. Why Saudi Arabia decided to go and attack them, again, is beyond me. I'm sure there was some push by the U.S. for them to go do that. And look where they are now. Now they cannot get their oil out. It's going to be very, very, again, obviously negative loss for them. How are they going to survive? They're an oil-rich country. That's their number one commodity. What are they going to do if they can't sell their oil? Now, a spokesperson for the Houthis came out and said in a pre-recorded statement on Saturday that the attack targeted facilities of Aramco, the world's largest oil company in the Red Sea cities of Yanbu and Jazan. There was no immediate comment from the Saudis, the kingdom's civil defense, and they came out saying that they saw that there were multiple times early on Saturday that the cities could be hit. Well, they brought it on themselves. I mean, you can't blame anybody but yourself at this point. Why you'd be so foolish to hit the Sana'a International Airport and cause this strife now. And by the way, they have a history, too, of war going back and forth in the last decade. So why they wanted to resume this for the United States, again, I don't know their thinking in Riyadh. I really don't understand this at all. Now, the rising tension in the Red Sea has also threatened to further choke global shipping because the rebels have now said that they will close the Bab el-Mandeb Strait to Saudi-linked shipping right now. And likely, as a result of this, we're seeing less traffic coming through the strait itself. This is the end result of all this. And this article in The Hill certainly corroborates that. It's saying that the attacks, again, on the Red Sea shipping on Sunday led to a drop in traffic through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, according to Kepler, which is the analytic platform that kind of tracks what's going on. Very similar to marinetraffic.com that I've told you about, too. You can look at what's going on in the strait in real time and see if ships are going and coming and what have you. But the strait saw some 11 cargo vessels move through the strait, the lowest number of ships to pass through in months. Again, this is according to Kepler's data. 3 of the 7 oil vessels entered the Red Sea, while 2 were headed to the Saudi port of Yanbu to load Saudi crude. That's what the data was showing us. Another vessel was Russian-linked, while the 4 others carrying 2 million barrels of Saudi and Emirati crude, including a Hong Kong-flagged very large crude carrier. Another tanker was carrying roughly about 750,000 barrels of Saudi crude headed for Pakistan. Yep, folks, we're seeing the supply chain shut down. And by the way, folks, if we have no access to this heavy crude oil here in the United States, we're in grave trouble. We're just in grave trouble. Not only will you have higher prices, you're going to be basically shutting down the economy. If we don't have the heavy crude to produce the diesel, to produce the jet fuel, how the hell are you going to get things on a tractor trailer to be shipped someplace else across the whole country? How are you going to get it from A to B? How are you going to get it from its headquarters or main warehouse to another location in the country? You're not. You're not. And I think most Americans will be very, very pissed off if we have empty shelves or if they simply can't get to where they need to go. But again, how would you track your way to work? What do you think the gas just rains into these gas stations? Of course not. They have to be shipped. What are they shipped by? Obviously, diesel-backed vehicles. You see how this can turn and spin out of control very, very quickly. Unfortunately, few people are talking about that, but I figured I would share that with you today as well. So I would expect the Red Sea to continue to slow down their traffic, certainly their commercial traffic. It's obviously hurting U.S. partners in the Persian Gulf as well. But this is what President Trump wants, apparently, folks. I do believe Netanyahu will absolutely 100%, as sure as I'm sitting here talking to you right now, will continue to push President Trump to continue this war. He'll give him some stupid information. We're close. They're ready to fall. We just got to keep going a little bit more, Donnie. Come on. Just keep poking the bear. A little bit more. And they'll come begging on their knees to us. It's not going to happen. Certainly anybody I've listened to that is worth a damn. I'm listening to people, for instance, that have access to people in the Pakistani government that are in the negotiations, that have relied this very crucial information, that the Iranians are just not going to budge on this. We just heard Mojtaba come out and say, listen, if we come to the table yet again, the first line of business is Lebanon's security, their own safety, their own sovereignty. Nothing is going to change that. Can you imagine that? Ask yourself this. If you were close to collapse as a world leader, would your number one concern be another country? Of course it would. It would be your own sovereignty yourself. So this just tells us the Iranians are still well in control of what's going on in the Strait, absolutely. Doesn't matter how much you bash their navy or you talk about their shipping and what have you. Their ships are in the bottom of the Persian Gulf. Doesn't matter to them. If we were able to, again, be the military stronghold, we would go and take the Strait ourselves. We're not doing that. It just simply isn't happening. For the reasons that they have the necessary missiles, the hypersonic missiles, the drone capacity to strike our vessels, and to deter any type of invasion that people are talking about right now. And again, I pray to God we do not have a land invasion. I really don't. I hope that's not in the planning right now. Because that will lead to either dead troops or, God forbid, also hostages being taken. Obviously, both are terrible. We don't want this for our military, folks. We don't want this. We don't need to see this. This does not have to happen. Let's pray to God it does not have to happen. Let's pray for their safety. Let's pray that they all make it home safe and they get home quickly. That's all I got to say to you on that. Out of Politico, it says here that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is expected at the White House this week. He's going to come to Lindsey Graham's funeral. One of his biggest backers, of course. So no shock there. And while he's here, he gets to talk to President Trump. It says Netanyahu has not been to the White House since the war began and has been angling for an invitation since at least April. Well, I mean, come on. We can't call him up? Come on. Of course he will. So at first there was no meeting, then it was arranged in the last couple of days. Of course he was going to get to a meeting. Why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't he? And then Netanyahu is eager to consult with President Trump about the escalation with Iran, as well as the United States nuclear deal with Saudi Arabia. Folks, this is so funny. Again, I'm laughing not because this is funny, the war itself, but because look how we're being played by the Israelis. Look at this. I mean, again, if somebody lied to you and said, listen, the Iranians are going to fall, this is the perfect time to hit, all our intelligence tells us this, and we follow them stupidly into this conflict. Again, this war of aggression, not of any real imminent threat. Certainly there was no nuclear weapon. And they were wrong, and then, of course, now you have this war on your hands, and now you look like a fool on the world stage, and you look like you have no control over everything. Would you really go and meet with this person yet again to hear a lot of this nonsense yet again? I mean, we keep hearing about the nuclear threat. Oh, they'll never have a nuclear weapon. Well, you know what you're doing? You're pushing them to considering, hey, we got to get a nuclear weapon. It's working out pretty well for North Korea right now. Now, I don't know if they'll obviously share with us what's going on with this conversation, or what will happen. Certainly, it probably will not give us any details about the meeting itself. But it's just amazing to me, folks, that Netanyahu just gets right in there, gets to talk to President Trump, and he will do what he normally does, is manipulate President Trump. That's what it'll be. And Trump will do what he wants, because we have this, certainly beside J.D. Vance, maybe at times, there's no opposition to this war. All the people that are opposed to this war are out of the government by now. The Joe Kents, the Tulsi Gabbards, these people are all gone, by and large. The Michael Antons, you have a couple people remaining, but very, very few. Very, very few. If Hegseth were at least honest with himself, he would obviously try to convince President Trump, along with J.D. Vance, that, listen, this is not good. This is no good. I mean, you can even bring in Kevin Warsh for all I care. And just all of you sit down and say, militarily, we're done. There's nothing here. Nothing we can accomplish any more than what we've done. It's not going to work the way we're fighting this war. Certainly. You could have Kevin Warsh come in, echo the economic woes of this. What are we looking at in 3 months from now, 6 months from now? And J.D. Vance can talk about the American sentiment, that we do not want this war. When you have 70% of Americans that are saying, listen, we don't want this war, we think you're handling this wrong, in a midterm election year, probably not a good idea, Donald. Not a good idea. But look, right here in Politico, Netanyahu helped convince. Look at this. He's meeting with Netanyahu, who helped convince him to launch this initial strikes. We know this because Marco Rubio told us this. He'll meet with them, but our own members of this cabinet cannot sit down with President Trump and convince him otherwise. It's amazing to me. Amazing. Now we're in a fight, in a battle, if you will, to open up a strait that was already open before the war. I wish it made sense, folks. I really, really do. Unbelievable. All right, folks, let me move on. We have a little bit of time remaining in today's program. Let me go over this article in USA Today. Now, as I told you yesterday, marked the 100 days until the November midterm elections, which I think President Trump should really put as a number one priority right now. He's not yet done that. But the battle to control Congress is heating up. We're entering really the final stretch. He's really got until September to really make things work. Right now, he has not captured the American people. We're holding slim majorities in both the upper and lower chambers of Congress. We're seeing polls suggesting a possible victory by Democrats in November. There was an Emerson poll that revealed 11 percentage point lead by the Democrats on the generic ballot. 53% compared to 42% favoring Republicans, as President Trump's approval ratings land at 39%. It's not very good, not very positive. And again, you have, other polls showing a much closer race. In a Washington Post Ipsos poll, also released on Thursday, voters said that they were more likely to vote Democrat if the U.S. House of Representatives race were held today. This is only by a 3-point percentage point lead of 48 to 45% in favor of the Democrats. So this is a slightly closer margin. Again, look at what people are talking about, though. People are upset about the war. People are upset about the economy. People do not want to see a struggling economy. That's the number one issue. That's the number one issue. Every time we have an election, that is the number one issue. Where are my finances going to be better with? Now, why you would think a Democrat would be that answer, again, I have no idea. I can't answer that for you. But people look at what's taking place currently and say, let me do something. Let's try something new. Well, the Democrats are not going to try anything new except bankrupt you, as we see happening time and time again with the Democrats. There's no change in their strategy. It's just more taxation and more regulation, less growth, less innovation, less resources being utilized. I mean, they can't even spell economy, yet they want to lead the economy. It's amazing. Now, we have seen, though, this is interesting, too. Despite the polling, which, again, remains extremely low for a president right now, we really haven't seen such low numbers for President Trump. Certainly, during his first term, we haven't seen things this low. But the president's endorsement power in Republican primaries remains strong still. Still the word of Trump still seems to get through. And we saw this recently with a sweep in Arizona on Tuesday. Trump's endorsements of congressional nominees so far have won every single primary. And will this power continue? Will this get him over the line come this November? I don't know. We really can't say at this point. It's going to come down to how people view the economy in September. That will likely be it. Around that time, in September, if people are still fed up with the way the economy is working, if we're getting higher inflation, higher gas prices, higher grocery prices, this will likely sway people to either not come out and vote, or they will vote for Democrats in a lot of these swing districts, which are crucial for President Trump to hold on to. But folks, we've got to give them something. We have to show them that we're doing something, at least turning something around. And by the way, if the war is still continuing on then, we keep hearing time and time again, well, we're ready to make a deal. Something tells me it's just simply not going to go well. It simply just won't work out. This war with Iran is unpopular as well. We're spending lots of money on it, lots of our time, lots of our own resources, and we're holding up our own supply chains as a result of this for a win that we don't even know what looks like a win. We don't even know. Nobody can tell us exactly what that means, folks. And I think really and truly that's the biggest problem with it all. We don't even know what a win would look like. We're seeing some Republicans now, certainly in the Senate. We're seeing John Cornyn, Bill Cassidy, in the House, Thomas Massey, being pushed out. Many people are upset about the Thomas Massey thing. Certainly I was at the time. But the economic strain posed by this war with Iran certainly remains a liability for all Republicans alike that have allowed this war to go on. People are not really happy, folks, with what's happening right now. And again, I really can't say I blame them. I can't blame them because really and truly, I agree with them. I'm not happy with the way the economy is going as well. Never forget, we elected President Trump for what reason, folks? We wanted him to fix what Joe Biden did. We want to close the borders. We want mass deportations. We want law and order. We don't want new wars. And anyone telling you that, again, do they have amnesia? Or they can't remember simple campaign promises to get us out of these wars. Tomorrow I'm going to go over with you Ukraine's approach to what's happening in this Iran war as well and how that's heating up, folks. That'll be very important, so hopefully you'll come tomorrow for that. Folks, make sure you're always staying prepped. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you back here tomorrow, as always, for another episode of The Marco Dre Show. Until then, be good, stay busy. God bless.